Greetings, Rommies, and welcome to WromComms, the podcast sharing the joy of sim racing and motorsports. Welcome. Thanks for stopping by. My name's Ike, and on this month's show, we have ACC dropping its 1.9 update, possibly the biggest change in 5 years to the sim.
Beam.NG Drive gets a spring cleaning.
And what's the future of some of the sims? Let's talk about that.
So this is where the intro would sit.
Boom, 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 boom,
That's the
boom,
one.
boom.
Welcome back, and let's start with the first of the topics tonight, one of the main topics at least. Assetto Corsa Competizione 1.9 has been released. It brings with it 3 new cars, a new track, and the biggest overhaul, I'm pretty sure, in Assetto Corsa's long and illustrious history. As far as how the tyres are handled. Certa, Cody, have you had an opportunity to have a go at it at all and have any opinions?
I have not. However, I have taken a look at all of it, all of the update release notes. I am very excited for the new cars, the 992 generation Porsche 911, the new Ferrari. Those are some standout highlights for me. There's some interesting things with the physics, a lot of things improved, but Ike, you mentioned that maybe they are not all as they seem.
I am angry. We'll get into that, don't you worry. Certa, have you had an opportunity to jump into it at all yet?
Not very much, because as patrons may know, patreon.com RomRom, as patrons may know, I'm setting up a new video room, and therefore that's where most of my time has gone. But yeah, I've tried a little bit of those and find them also quite interesting. And yeah, what Ike was saying and you, Cody, quoted is what I've heard from other racers too.
Yeah. So for those of you who haven't been up on ACC, maybe you spend your time in another sim, the calculations that create tyre wear, tyre blistering, flat spots, things like that in Assetto Corsa Competizione have basically been going into one calculation, much like the original Assetto Corsa, just takes one reading across the tyre and feeds that into the physics. What that causes, or what happens as a result of that, is you get one tyre reading, it's either flat spotted or it isn't, and the grip level is not very responsive. What they have changed now is they had 5 pickup points that they were using across the surface of the tyre, and found in this 1.9 update that they could, rather than putting it into one equation at the end of it and getting an average, they could actually, without causing too much issue, put them into 5 separate equations to give you your resultant grip, blister, tyre graining, heat levels, everything like that. The way that one of the developers said it was that it's like driving on 20 tyres as opposed to 4 tyres, because you've got the 5 points that are going into 5 separate equations. What that has done is it means that it's now very, very easy with the old setups to overheat the inside shoulder and then heat the inside of the tyre, you cause yourself blistering. It's a lot more realistic. And as far as that's concerned, it's great. It's fantastic. The highest compliment that I can give about it is it's much closer to R-Factor 2 and iRacing than Assetto Corsa has ever been. And if they are using this how I think they are, then this may well be building towards Assetto Corsa 2. And coming back to the conversation that we had last month, if Assetto Corsa 2 is as open-minded as far as mods are concerned as Assetto Corsa 1 was, we may have a new top dog in sim racing.
Well, we'll have to see. Also because, and that's something that we have been skimming during the beginning of the podcast, is that one of the goals of this change, one of the things that the developers in Kunos wanted to do with Assetto Corsa Competizione and with its update, was to eliminate the cheating that is happening in esports of making very extreme setups. And because of the mechanics of Assetto Corsa Competizione, those extreme setups make you faster, which they would not in real life. Unluckily, yes. And that's something that we've been commenting about, but not commenting it directly. Unluckily, this is something that still is possible.
Yes, I'm in an active Assetto Corsa Competizione Championship, and the impacts that have been felt and fed back from the community is that the old setups are still the fastest way to do hot laps. The difference is that you now pay a price for those setups in that they do 2 to 3 laps maybe, but they won't go any further than that because the tires will be absolutely wrecked, which again is realistic.
So you can use them for qualifying, but then if you try to race with them, so a way to disturb anyone cheating this way would be to have the setups for qualifying fixed for the race. Is that something that you can do in Assetto Corsa Competizione?
Exactly what I was going to say. That is absolutely something that you can do. Not many communities actually enforce it because not many drivers actually do it. Up until this point, there's been no reason to split your setup because the end of stints you're going to be running with a light car anyway, and normally you'd have much worse tyre wear. So wherever you want the car's balance to be, you're going to want it to be in the same place on light fuel and heavy fuel. It's not like the Formula One games where the aero balance and the weight balance of the car doesn't really move. Cars like the Porsche, the Mercedes, the Aston Martin all have a massive weight shift over the course of the stint. You do need to put a lot of work into having a car that works both on light fuel and rough tires, light fuel, good tires, heavy fuel, good and bad tires, because sometimes you will, if you have a race with a mandatory pit stop, you might not want to change tyres to save some time, so you may end up coming out of the pits on semi-used tyres, and you may be going right down to the very bottom of the wear level. It's a difficult situation that ACC are in. Kunos are clearly putting the work in to make sure that by the time we get to the 2024 release of Assetto Corsa 2, which is what they are still hoping for as far as I'm aware, that they're going to have a much more controlled model, and we may end up with, as I say, we're looking on the bright side here, we may well have a new King of Sim Racing, which caters to everybody as well. So yeah, we'll see. I've just come out of doing some testing with McLaren 720S, and essentially what I ended up doing was using the dampers as the springs rather than the springs. So I put all the spring rates to minimum and used the dampers, and that seems to work. The other thing that they changed in the update was the bump stops having infinite travel, which we actually covered in it was occurring in another sim as well, if I remember. It was AMS2, wasn't it?
Correct.
Where the floor was interacting with the track. So it's not a problem that's unique to ACC. We're not necessarily aiming at ACC in any way. This is a problem that is across all games. There's going to be bugs and exploits. Hell, R-Factor 2 has had the same setup exploit since 2013, and they've not done anything with it. So this isn't having a go. It's just very fresh and raw, and they've completely changed the way that the game runs. And as a side effect to my experience anyway, and again, this is my experience in a live championship, it seems as though controllers have now become a lot more meta than they had got to in version 1.8. Because of the assists that controller players get, they're able to keep the tires in check for longer because, well, there's footage around of controller players doing lock to lock in a single frame. There's some work to do, let's say that. But the new cars are from the people who have driven it. I haven't actually bought the DLC because the cars don't really interest me. But the opinions that I have heard so far from drivers, very, very fast drivers, as well as the amateur pace drivers, is that the new cars are absolutely sublime in the new physics model, which makes sense. Hopefully the older cars will get an update to compete. If I remember correctly, there has been work done on the Mercedes AMG. There's also been work done on the Datsun, the Nissan GTR. Maybe they're working on updating the entire range of cars, and you never know, some of the older cars might come back into the meta with these new tyre physics as well.
And either the DLC or the changes in the physics have also worked in another thing, and it's that Assetto Corsa Competizione last month got the best number of daily average users ever that we have in our data. at least for last month, it attracted people anew to the sim, as well as people who had not looked into the sim yet started racing with it. So, as I said, highest number of daily average users that we've ever recorded.
Now, is that for just within the game's history or for all sim racing titles?
No, for Assetto Corsa Competizione. The one that is still used the most, and I expect it will keep that way, is Beam.NG. Then comes Assetto Corsa, and then comes Assetto Corsa Competizione. But Beam.NG has something like 8,000 to 9,000. Assetto Corsa has around 8,000, and Assetto Corsa Competizione, if I remember the numbers correctly, from Sunday had something like 2,700. And that's daily average users over the month.
And that is a substantial amount of people. We'll come back to that in just a minute. I think that's probably the best thing to do. But yes, there's a lot going on at the moment around ACC, around Kunos. It's great to see. I am only marginally salty, but you have to be so careful with your tires now.
That's good, and that's realistic. I mean, what differentiates sim racing from other racing games is that you try to have a simulation of reality, of real life physics, as near as possible to real life physics. We all know that with the systems that we have, and maybe for many years, we won't have a completely realistic experience, but we tried, or the developers tried, to make it as realistic as possible. And I think the way that they've gone about it is the right direction.
Oh, absolutely. What the changes they've made have fundamentally changed the game, and it has made it far more enjoyable. As someone who's been playing since it first came out, this is the first time that I am actually enjoying driving ACC. I've been very down on it because I'm in the middle of a competition that I was doing really well in, and this has completely thrown me, because you need to be good with everything being balanced of performance and everything like that. You need to have the setup in the right place to be able to get the best out of the car. I am very salty at the moment, very gamer salt as well, but it is really fun to drive. And if you've got ACC in your library, grab any of the cars, go onto your favorite track and give it a spin, because it has changed for the better.
Going on a short tangent here, one thing that I would love to see in a future sim would be, with some kind of AI support or whatever, having an engineer that you tell the car is behaving like that, behaving like that, behaving like that, and tries to tweak the setup. Project Cars 2 had something like that, but it was very basic, and it wasn't very good. And you ended up with setups that you didn't want to use. But something that is like in real life, because like drivers, race drivers, race pilots don't know every nook and cranny in the cars. They normally go and say the car behaves like that, maybe do this or do that, and then the engineer and the mechanics go and change the details. Maybe at some point somebody has a good idea to make something like that, which also would simulate real life better.
So there are already a number of sites as well as Discord bots which have that capability. They vary from literally, they give you all of the lists that can combat the behavior that you're experiencing, down to giving them lap times and the symptoms you're suffering at which corner, and the bots then reacting to what you're giving them. They are quite good. I think the next step of that may actually come in something like Track Titan, Crew Chief, or any of these aftermarket things which you can get hold of. As I say, they do already exist. Having it embedded, the only thing I can remember is Project Cars 2.
Yeah.
And again, I will say this again, Project Cars 2 was so good for sim racing. It was fantastic for sim racing, and that's the hill I will absolutely die on, because it taught you the basics of setups. It told you what you were doing wrong and right, and it gave you the impact of everything down to the slow and fast bumps and the transition between the two, which was unheard of up until that point. You always knew how to make a setup because you could look at the setup, hover over the particular thing you're looking to change, and it would tell you exactly what it would do.
We were talking about the number of average players, and I would like us to move on to another point, and that is, I think the writing's on the wall, and if you're realistic, anybody can see it. Motorsport games is dying. Motorsport games is gonna go belly up in the next, I don't know, 6 to 12 months. This is something that I think it will need a miracle, and even the change that they've done, they got rid of Mr. Costco, and now they have Mr. Holt there.
They didn't, did they? He's still there.
Yeah, well, but he's on the board of directors, and who knows for how long. In any case, whatever management does, the way that it's going and the way that it's been going for quite a while, I don't think motorsport games is going to survive for long. The question is, what will happen to rFactor 2? Will it die with it?
Well, we've had a lot of conversations about this, haven't we? I'm interested in what Cody has to say.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things about bankruptcy in the United States is there's two main types. There's a bunch of other different types, but there's two main types where there's restructuring, where they, say, hey, we're going through this court process, absolving ourselves of a lot of debts, and then we're going to be starting off with a lot less.
Chapter 11,
getting. Yeah, that's the one. And resetting things. People are going to go out. People are going to come into the company. And the company will still exist as they know it, or as we know it, but they'll have sold off assets, that sort of thing. And then the other thing, which is the more common one, is, what was it, Chapter 7 bankruptcy, where it is complete and total liquidation. And so in that, the first people that you have to pay off are your creditors. So whoever Motorsport Games owes money to, they have to sell assets in order to pay them off first, and then everybody else gets paid, investors, etc., until the money runs out. Essentially,
there's nothing left. Yeah,
right. But yeah, so that's the liquidation process, and so Motorsport Games has a few things that are very valuable that they will most likely have to sell, or if they're restructuring, possibly have to sell. And rFactor 2 is, I would say, the big one. That is, of course, their most successful product that they have in their portfolio. Of course, they bought it, but, they still did have it. And it's very possible that rFactor 2 will be fine, maybe, but they will be sold off to another company. Let's say, like the people who own Raceroom, KW, or some other company that's looking to expand their portfolio into racing simulation.
The thing is, how valuable, and that's something that I don't have an answer, so it's a very open question. How valuable is rFactor 2 without the licenses? The code. I mean, the code is 10 years old?
The code's 10 years old, but then at least they've updated to DirectX 11. iRacing's still on DirectX 9.
As is Raceroom, by the way.
As is Raceroom. But then again, that just makes it more appealing to KW.
One of the big questions that you always have in software development, especially if you're a big company that has own developers, is make or buy. And that would be for KW. If we're going that imaginary road of KW Studios, would it be easier to have the own developers do an update to DirectX 11, 12, whatever, or would it be easier to buy the rFactor 2 code and then convert that into the new Raceroom, rFactor Raceroom 2 or whatever? So that's a good question, and that's a question I don't have an answer to because I don't know the code of rFactor 2 or the code of Raceroom. So
those would be completely different game engines, so I don't think you're going to see a merger in that sense at all.
Here's one for you though. How about rFactor 2 but with the Raceroom business model and UI. Much like with Assetto Corsa, there's two different executables that run depending on if you're in the menu or if you're in the game.
Correct.
You could have a very, very similar experience in Raceroom, and then you immediately get away from the terrible UI, quote unquote, of rFactor 2, and you keep all of the amazing tyre model, the day-night cycle, Raceroom doesn't have, the weather cycles, Raceroom doesn't have.
The PBR, Raceroom doesn't have.
The PBR. Do you see what I mean? There is opportunities here. I absolutely agree with Cody. I don't think that the worst thing that would happen to Studio 397 / rFactor 2 is it wouldn't get bought out and then it would become abandonware. At which point we have to remember that Studio 397 started out as a group of modders that took over the development of the ISI engine and have been basically doing that for 7 years, 7 years, I think they've been doing this now. So they would probably carry on doing it out of love anyway.
Thing is, would they have access to the licenses? Because one of the interesting things when Motorsport Games bought rFactor 2 and Motorsport Games being a daughter of Motorsport Network was that they said, at least Motorsport Network said, we have these licenses, IndyCar, NASCAR, Le Mans, BTCC. We can bring racing games or sims. They were not exact enough in their wording because PR tries to be as unexact as possible.
Yep.
Like, we're going to produce games where people are going to be able to race with these licenses on the rFactor 2 engine, which is what NASCAR 21 tried to do but failed miserably because QA was great but management didn't react to that. In any case, NASCAR 21, there's ways of noticing that there's rFactor 2 under the hood, but let's say that Motorsport Games goes belly up, rFactor 2 gets sold to whoever, gets sold maybe to Straight 4, but
I don't think they'd have the money to buy it, honestly.
The other thing
that's another story. But and let's say they don't get the access to these licenses. What happens then? Would it still be interesting enough? And that's something that I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because if you have the rFactor engine, you show it to at least 70% of sim racers, and whatever it is, it doesn't matter if it's a Toyota badge or if it's a Toyota badge, to use the URD name for it. It's still going to be interesting. It's still going to be good to drive. You've still got the tire model. You've still got the majority reliable driver changes, which again is something that even ACC still hasn't nailed. And I was having a conversation in one of the rFactor 2 discords that I'm in, and apparently you can kind of hack it through Assetto Corsa. It works, but it's just as dodgy as having to pre-register and have your Steam ID linked to a car, and then you can't join the server before the other one's left. And
absolutely,
when you bear in mind the package that rFactor 2 is, without the licenses, you can rebadge all of them, or you could rely on mods, and people would still be interested in that game. In my opinion, what needs to happen is rFactor 2 needs to be consigned to the history books. Whoever the studio is that takes over from where MSG is at the moment, you never know. Studio 397 might be bought out, quote unquote, to MSN directly, which would mean retaining all of the licenses, and you then lose all of the bureaucracy that was above them before.
I wouldn't be surprised if Motorsport Networks is the biggest debtor to Motorsport Games.
Exactly. So if they just took rFactor 2 under their wing directly, because they have the licenses, and said, look, we're okay now, the rest of you can just go. And that would be awful for Kartcraft and all of the other studios they bought, though. But I can't think of any other studios that they bought that have done anything that are nearly as noteworthy as Studio 397.
Yeah, Well, Kartcraft was noteworthy because it was based on the UE engine, I think 4 or 5 even.
It was
5?
the UE5. Yeah.
And you could use VR quite well, better than Assetto Corsa Competizione.
Yeah, there you go. It was 704 Games, and Kartcraft was the name of the developers as well. Yeah, so NASCAR 21 is essentially the Kartcraft graphics over the S397 engine, and they just kind of went, you fit, right?
Yeah, and from what I've heard, they had quite a long list coming back from the QA people,
Yes.
but they had to put it out of the door at a certain point in time, and it went out with a lot of bugs.
It did. It did. There were a lot of issues with that game. There still are a lot of issues with that game.
Yeah. And every day less and less people racing on that. Coming back to the numbers and moving on from R Factor 2, one that is having lower numbers day by day. And if I check the news, for example, on Sunday, horrible roadmap is Raceroom.
Yeah, what was it? 0.5 Rietzers or...
Yeah,
no,
I said that the whole of the roadmap for this year coming from KW Studios for Raceroom is 0.5 Razors.
Yeah, or 0.25 a quarterly Beam.NG update.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it's I don't know. I think it's quite squalid, and I put the question in the news: Is it a studio? Down? Yeah, is it a studio that is winding down, or that has so little a number of developers, or are the developers concentrated in something else?
Well, wasn't there an issue with a lot of the developers leaving KW Studios? Was that something I read, or just that I dreamt?
I don't remember something like that.
That's fine. I may just be imagining it. But again, if development speed, and again, if anyone from KW Studios is watching, please don't take this personally, but if it's a lack of manpower or a lack of talent that they have at the moment, motorsport games going under and being able to acquire a license like a studio like 397, which have always been known for how hard they work, it's only going to be good things, possibly.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, maybe they're working on Raceroom too. I don't know. But when I saw that roadmap, I was like, wait, is that all? I don't know how you guys felt.
It depends on how far their development is. As you say, the thing is that they had Q2.5 and Q3.5 releases. Now they could blow us out of the water. They could be updating to DX12, adding rain and time of day and things like that. The key features that are currently missing from Raceroom. That's what could be coming.
I could won the lottery on the weekend, but let's stop dreaming.
Exactly.
So for those unfamiliar, because not everyone has read the roadmap for 2023 from Raceroom. So
they do watch our news every week.
In December, they released the Driver's Pack, which was 4 new cars, and a
track.
Yeah, I believe there was a track. But now the new stuff that's coming out and will be coming out to look forward to is the so they also released the On the Edge pack.
4 cars
in April. Yep, 4 cars, including a DPI. The Mazda DPI from IMSA.
The only one that matters.
Yeah, beautiful vehicle. So Q2, their announcements so far until the end of the year. For Q2, the BMW M4 GT3 will be coming to Raceroom. And then there will be 3 new Porsches. I believe they're all 911s, I want to say.
No, one was the 966, if I remember correctly. It's one of the older ones. And a
944.
944, that's the one. There we go.
Yeah, so it was from the early days of the Porsche Cup, and then it was the 911 GT3R, the new generation one that also was recently released for and the 992 Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car. But the GT3, I think that's the same one that came to ACC recently with this.
May very well be. Porsche's been selling their licenses left and right and up and down.
Which
For
makes
sure.
sense. It's
Yeah,
exactly the thing. The thing, it comes back to what we were saying last week, is that people are identifying with these brands now as part of their identity.
Mhm.
And who is the most prolific customer racing company? It's Porsche. That I absolutely believe that Porsche have sold more 911s in their history to race teams, or they've sold more cars, 963, etc. Come into that as well. I thoroughly believe that they've sold more cars than any other racing manufacturer ever.
But we're going on a tangent. Cody, you were saying what they are planning to publish.
Yes, so after that, in Q3, or Q2.5, they're calling it, there is an unspecified release. We don't know what that content is, but they're saying they're planning on releasing something then. And then in October, they've announced Circuit Depot, the very, very tight, twisty French racing street circuit.
Great track.
Yes, great track if you want to hit the wall. But they are also releasing a touring car pack, and I don't think they've specified
Nope.
what cars are in that pack yet.
No details.
Yeah, so we'll have to wait, and we don't know how big that pack will be as well. And then they're planning a Q3.5 release as well, content unspecified, and then a Christmas special, also unspecified. To me, that seems like a decent amount of content for a studio as small as they are. Like they're no big, motorsport games. They're not iRacing with,
Yeah,
so
but I
many
would go on
players.
a limb and say that Reza are maybe half as big, or let's say as big as KW Studios. That what you have now said, which is in the roadmap for Raceroom, is what they bring out in a quarterly drop. So it's not much compared to, as I said, companies like Reza. Let's not speak about Beam.NG. So
I would also think to mention that they are probably working on something else, or at least in the early stages of something else, given that Raceroom is from 2013 and doesn't quite have the numbers to sustain it that, say, R Factor 2, which is from the same time period, and Assetto Corsa, also from the same time period, all have. And so it's probably, my guess is that, whatever you feel they're lacking in dev power is probably going to something we don't know about.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
possible.
That's one of my thoughts. Like they are either winding down, which would surprise me, because KW is a big-ish company. It's a healthy company that other than KW Studios also owns Asha, by the way, makers of great rims for SimuCube. So yeah, I would not expect them to be winding down, but to be working on something. So let's keep our ears pricked.
Yeah, especially getting into July and August time. We're going to need to keep our ear close to the ground about rumblings and whisperings and possible leaks around Raceroom. There could be something coming. We'll keep our chin up and hope for the best for KW Studios. And again, all of this is speaking in the future. Lots of things can change in between now and then. Cody, what was the subject you came up with? It was the
Beam.NG.
Beam.NG, yes.
Yeah,
Talk us through that.
Beam.NG Drive, they have released their version 0.28 spring update. And, if you want to talk about releases that are just okay, this one was, I think, just okay. It was decently solid. It had some good additions, but it lacked some of the major content additions that we like to expect from Beam.NG Drive.
Well, from the content, it was half of what Raceroom promises for the whole year.
Well, let's go through it. So they are refreshing the ETK cars, the 800 series, which is the wagon, the station wagon and sedan that they have, and the K series. So they're getting just some remasters on those, which is going to include some extra parts, better graphics, better parts. I was saying a new V8 engine in them, and then openable doors as well. Yeah, for a lot of these, which I was of the understanding that there were already doors that could be opened, but I guess that this is adding it to more cars.
No. You can open them when you hit the tree. Now you can open them like on purpose.
I see. Gotcha. See, I usually, when I was trying to open something, I would just use the node grabber and just pull it open. So
That's
I guess this allows you to skip that process.
Yeah, this is probably an actual function rather than having to use node grabber, which I still don't know how to use. Anyway,
control click.
Really?
Yeah, and then use your scroll wheel on your mouse to control the intensity. There we go. We learned you a thing.
Thank you. That was easy.
And so Automation Test Track also got an overhaul, a proper remaster. They called it a fresh coat of paint, which I thought was clever. And detail on the buildings. There's new trees and such, terrain. It'll look a lot better when you go in. I haven't explored it yet, but they say that there's also a bunch of other like improvements to Utah, Italy, Grid Map V2. So
yeah,
good stuff.
They've been working for the last, I don't know, half a year to whole year. They've been doing a lot of work on terrain that looks very similar to what R Factor 2 has done with their PBR.
Mm-hmm. But you see, all of this in this update so far that I've covered is just polishing. You know, these are all things that already existed and will continue to exist. They just made them up a bit prettier.
Let's not forget that normally Beam.NG, the content drops are every half a year, like in summer and in winter. And this was just a spring update. So it was not one of their famous half-year drops.
The ones that we look at in the news update and go, why?
Well, anyways, they got some new missions as well, 18 of them. And then there is some user interface changes. They've, again, done some polishing, done some tweaks, added a new tool at the repository, the Mod Manager tab, called List Possibly Broken Mods, which is something that I'm very, very excited about as someone who has been playing Beam.NG for a long time and has a lot of old mods that I try to get to work. And so they're like, hey, this is broken. And whenever the game updates, it's like new stuff could be broken. So that's good to have as a thing. And that's about it. They've done a few other bug fixes, but not much beyond that.
Yeah, it's a conversation that I have with myself every time we come to do the news is how much do we want to go into? Because the thing is, you could very easily just read verbatim out of the update patch notes, and it would still be interesting. Beam.NG is a developer that is absolutely prolific when it comes to updates, and more power to them. Absolute kudos. The work they're doing is fantastic, and that the majority of their work is used only to throw cars at trees. Yeah, it shows how much love there is behind what they're doing. I don't know what they're trying to build with Beam.NG, because some of them
a physics engine.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Is because they're clearly, as Cody was saying, they're making it pretty, which implies that they have an end goal in mind to this, and the missions that they're adding. Are they trying to make it like Gran Turismo? Are they trying to make it? But that all requires online.
How old is Beam.NG? I think what it started as let me see how I get a physics engine. What would be an interesting thing? I like cars. Let me do a physics engine where I can drive cars and break them and have other stuff breaking in the cars. And now that I have cars, I have to do roads. And if I have cars on roads, maybe I do trucks. And I think it ballooned from the idea of let me see how good a physics engine I could do. And I don't think there's an end goal. I think the end goal for the developers is let me see how much I can fiddle with this physics engine and make it open enough that other people can fiddle within this physics engine with mods, with doing incredible things like throwing cannonballs at trucks or whatever. There's thousands of very strange videos out there doing very strange things with cars and potholes and whatnot.
It's almost as if they're trying to make a game. Shocking idea.
So that's a tricky thing, though, is that like,
Yeah.
I mean, they have their campaign mode, sure, but that's been in progress for who knows how long now. But like, I can't remember who said it recently, but I was watching somebody who said that like the devs of Beam.NG don't really know what they have because it could be so many great things.
Yeah.
It's like it's a bold claim, and RBR, like Richard Burns Valley people are going to come for me, but I think you could make a solid case for it to be the best currently like updated, supported, in active development rally sim. out
I
there.
absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
I think it was this winter that they added a couple of very interesting dirt,
Scramblers and stuff.
buggies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but I think the thing that the developers behind Beam.NG are doing is not that they don't know what they have, is that they just offer these. It's like Lego. Hey, we have all these building parts. Do whatever you want with them. I think that's what they're doing.
They're making automotive Minecraft.
Yeah,
That's a good way to.
And the thing is, they are so close to getting it absolutely perfect. I think the only thing that's actually lacking now, the only thing that seriously needs work, is the way that they deal with aerodynamics. As far as I'm aware, it's been a while now, but if they can get the aerodynamics down, which in absolute fairness to them, not even the sims that have been going for as long as they have that are focused on aerodynamics have got it right. They're having to use dummies and stand-in numbers and coefficients that they've basically pulled out of their head to make it seem real. Like, no one's done it properly, and you just know that somewhere there is a developer in the corner of the Beam.NG offices that is just sat trying to work out how to put CFD into Beam.NG. Like, I need to do this. I need to do it right. So I'm going to do it right. We love Beam.NG. We love you, Beam.NG. You're great. You're
automotive
fantastic.
Minecraft. I'll have to remember that one.
Automotive Minecraft. And please give us something other than those damn snowmen to walk around in. They're so off-putting. Anyway, so from Beam.NG, we go to a feature that, again, we're trialing. We're in the very early stages of this podcast. Hopefully, many, many more to come.
Let us know in the comments or on Discord how you like it, please.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the features, everything that we're trying, we're trialing different ways of doing things. If something hits a nerve that you really like or you really don't like, comments everywhere. We do read them. We look through them. In the majority of cases, we do reply to them as well. So we're always looking for that kind of positive feedback and just making sure that we're doing the right things and we're making enjoyable content here. As part of that little trial that we're doing this time is Quickfire news. So we're just going to pick out a news item that we haven't covered and just say a very short statement on it. And then hopefully, if you missed that week's news, you can go back and watch that news and get the in-depth side of it. Or you can just leave a comment below and let us know what your opinion is of it. I actually hadn't looked through the stories, and I'm going to pick one of the things as my praise from Project Cars 2 earlier probably lets you know I'm a big fan, not necessarily of Ian Bell, but his vision for sure. And finding out that Straight 4 have found a publisher, his new studio, and hopefully they have been onboarding some very, very, very clever people. And hopefully whatever they come out with next is going to be similar to the revolution that Project Cars was. I do have faith in Straight 4. I think that they have a lot to potentially offer. If I remember correctly, they did actually get one of the developers from Richard Burns Rally or someone similar.
Nope.
Similarly,
you're thinking about Kunos, who got
Kunos, yes.
Who got a developer from RBR Online and who also did G Rally, but he went to Kunos, and we don't know exactly what he's doing because the only information we have is from Instagram, an Instagram post that he did saying that he's going to Kuno Simulazioni, and with an image that makes us think he's going to be working on physics, like I suppose 90% of the people who are working right now on Assetto Corsa 2.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't. That's what needs fixing. Oh, Straight 4 has the Stig as their physics feedback.
But wasn't the Stig already on Project Cars even 1 and 2?
I think he was. Yeah, that would explain why it was so good in the day. Austin Ogonowski is joining as well. That's cool as well. Excellent. No, they do. As I say, they do have some really, really important people and really pivotal people that in the history of sim racing have brought some good things out. So they're making the right noises. I'm glad they have a publisher. Hopefully this is all good news. I'll let either of you go next.
I'll go. So if you were scrolling around on Steam and you were looking at racing games and you saw a cool looking early access game called Drag, that game is no longer called Drag. It's called Exocross, and it looks really cool. It was originally Drag. They've renamed it, rebranded it. It was originally an indie game, and then this is getting acquired, I think, or it got acquired by iRacing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is a super interesting thing because it doesn't really feel like iRacing's wheelhouse. Because I mean, this isn't really a sim so much. It's still a game. It's like a futuristic off-road racing game.
iRacing are branching out into racing games. They did what's it called, the dirt racing game, which I think is especially good in consoles. So they are branching out into quite classic racing games. Like you said, this Exocraft now called is quite futuristic and will have not much to do with reality, but it's a racing game, whatever.
Oh wait, are you talking about the World of Outlaws?
Yeah, exactly.
Game? So well, see, that's still I mean, it's a little bit more sim-cadey than iRacing, but that's still like a real life series.
Yeah.
World of Outlaws and the Dirt Modifieds.
Yeah.
But this is futuristic, camera behind the car, kind of like arcade off-road futurism, sort of like just slam the controller's throttle and run into people sort of game. It looks really fun. I think it's very interesting that iRacing bought them out and took over. Although I would say it's worth mentioning Orontes, which is the original developers of this. They are still working on it. It's just owned by iRacing and I guess funded by iRacing, which is a good thing. You can get the early access of Exocross for $30 and Drag if you want to try the older version, the demo version, I guess you could call it now. That's free now. So there you go.
They always had a demo, like even when they were on early access, which they are now gonna still be as Exocraft. There was always a demo, and it was nice. It was fun.
I wonder if they're angling more towards, because something that has been lacking in iRacing is the off-road racing, and that has been so for a long time. I wonder
no, they have I'll say it tomorrow, Rallycross.
And
they have dirt racing.
Yeah.
And they have dirt racing, and they are the only one, the only sim out there that has dirt racing, as far as I know.
Again, Project Cars 2 and Dirt Rally.
Okay.
Project Cars 2.
Dirt Rally is only Rallycross, not dirt racing.
It isn't. Yeah, it's the only multiplayer racing, true multiplayer racing that you can do in Dirt Rally is the Rallycross, absolutely. But Project Cars 2, which has been taken off sale, so if you can find it from a key reseller, buy it before they run out of keys.
Do it,
because it's an important part of sim racing history, and it has. So, short story. I had a friend who heard me waxing lyrical about how much fun Project Cars 2 is on the dirt. So my mini clubman around Spa story I've told quite a few times. Obviously, he decided that it came up on Steam sale. He decided to buy it. Now, this man has been playing iRacing more or less since it was released, and he's been specializing in the off-road racing for years. He jumped into Project Cars 2, and he sent me a direct message on Steam after about 15 minutes of being in game, saying, "Oh my goodness, why has no one told me about this before now?" Project Cars 2 Dirt is the best. Comes back to the Straight Force Studios and what we may be seeing from them, but also you need to have Project Cars 2 is an important part of sim racing history. You need to have it in your library. That needs to be preserved. But that may be iRacing wanting to cement that corner of the market, because, as I say, the problem with iRacing is that their off-road racing has been lackluster. People use it because there's nothing better, quote unquote, and they aren't aware of it. But if they were aware of how you can take Le Mans prototypes around hell in Norway, in Project Cars 2, they may change their mind. And that's one thing that iRacing has the top, like they are top dog, but they need to keep working to keep that audience engagement. Assetto Corsa 2 is coming. There's all sorts of things going on in the background that we may well find usurps iRacing from its throne. It just needs to happen.
One thing that I found very interesting in the last month in sim racing news was the C5 wheel from Cammus. I think it's the only portable direct drive wheel in the market, and I think they are going to price it very low, very aggressively. It's a 5 Newton meter wheel, so it's not one of the big ones. It's not comparable to the Simu Cubes or something like that. It's more comparable to what Logitech, Thrustmaster, and Fanatec with the CSL DD, I think it's called, have brought out. So it's a 5 Newton meter wheel. They say because of the physics of the way they have set up the motor and the wheel, you're gonna feel the 5 Newton meter as if it's 8 or 10 Newton meter in other systems. But in any case, it's a wheel, it's portable. There's rumblings that it may be priced at something between $200 and $400 US. Wow. If that is the case, if it's a portable DD wheel that feels like an 8 Newton meter wheel, at $400 US, then Logitech can close shop with their DD wheel, Thrustmaster can close shop with their DD wheel, and Fanatec will have problems getting rid of their CSL DDs.
The problem for me, though, is that someone beat it with the ugly stick. I hate how this thing looks.
Who cares if you're saving $300?
You know what? That's a fair point. I'm not saying that it's not practical or anything like that, but it looks like the first version of a product.
It's allowed that.
Which it is, and I think it's the typical case of engineering. It's form follows function, and it's not thinking like Apple did for a while. They're forgetting that for many reasons. That yes, form follows function, but do the function nicer and have the ergonomics of the function be smoother, and then the function and the form will go hand in hand to sell millions. But yeah, I get what you're saying. On the other hand, I race on VR anyway, so I don't even see the wheel that is in front of me. Like I have a Cube Controls rim that is nice and has a lot of colors and blings and whatnot, and I don't see it because I'm on VR.
And to your point of being hit with the ugly stick, I can fix the ugly stick problem really easily. If you put a deep dish wheel in there so that the buttons are embedded slightly further in the wheel, you wouldn't have a problem with it. But that would add rotational mass, which would take away from we're getting 8 Newton meters out of 5 feeling that they're going for. So, because what they've done is they've basically stacked the traditional direct drive servo motor into. Normally, you have the magnets spread along the the length of the motor. They've just stacked them on top of each other. So you have a very tall, very short motor, and they've played into the benefits of it. You've got a wheel that you can grip. You've got buttons that fit within the size of the motor, and I will be very interested in this wheel and
the price.
And yeah, if it is that price, I will probably get one. And the first thing I will do is take it apart and see if I can build a wheel for it that isn't as ugly.
So you'll get two, one to race with and one to fiddle with.
I will probably. Well, I have my G29 anyway, so what I'll do is I'll carry on using the G29 while I understand what's going on there. Because one of the things that Acertech have done, which fascinates me with their wheel, is I think they're using a universal USB hub inside their wheels, which means that if you get a generic USB controller, connect your buttons up to it, get their universal hub so that you can connect it in the right order, you can conceivably make your own wheel from scratch, and you can have unlimited numbers of those wheels. And I think that this could be similar with a little bit of fettling. We're entering into an area now where it's the tinkerers that are getting the best stuff.
In any case,
So,
it's
hang on.
yeah. Go ahead.
I have maybe breaking news here, actually. On the Chinese website Taobao, the Cammus C5 Racing Simulator Direct Drive Base Steering Wheel is on pre-sale for a 1 Chinese yuan deposit, and they are listing the total price as 1,499 Chinese yuan, which is 216 USD.
So it'll be 400 by the time it makes its way west.
Well, yeah, because of the transport costs. Yeah, let's round it up to 400. It's still gonna be incredibly competitive.
It's compelling.
Against Logitech and against Thrustmaster and even against Fnatic.
Yeah, it'll depend on the software and it'll depend on the rotational speed, which again is one of those things that Acertech has made us aware of that is actually really important in their recent releases. Is the actual speed that the wheel rotates at does contribute to the fidelity of the feedback. So yeah, a lot of interesting things going on in sim racing, but that I think will actually be all from us, unless anybody else has anything else to add.
We want to do favorites, or do we leave it for next month?
We'll leave it for next month. What we'll do is, I tell you what we'll do. We'll sound off in the comments. If you've gotten to this part in the podcast, you're clearly invested. What's your favorite track? And we will run through the answers that come in the comments next month. How about that? And then we'll give our own favorite tracks as well, because I remember the conversation that we had before about where we came up with the topic. It was, yeah, there's a lot of choice in really, really good tracks, isn't there, in the world? But nonetheless, we'll leave that for now. Sound off below any feedback that you have. What's your favorite track? And how can we make this podcast better, in your opinion? Again, we read all the comments. We will reply to all of them that are appropriate. So ask us where appropriate, and we'll get back to you as well. But I think from Serta, Cody, and myself, Ike, that is about all from us. So thank you very much for listening to this podcast. And until next time, save fuel, collect pickup, and we'll see each other on the podium.
Like and subscribe. Bye.